we can do How to Destroy a Game Studio, a Winterborn podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of How to Build a Game Studio.
How to Destroy a Game Studio.
And
actually, every game studio I've been a part of for a while went down.
So Genevieve is How to Destroy a Game Studio.
Genevieve's the expert.
Yeah.
The expert. Well, so I am joined today by, once again, Genevieve Gambill.
Hello.
And some guy named Kent. He just walked in here off the street.
I'm a guy.
He's not important.
Nope. Just a guy.
Just a guy.
Just a guy who I can never compliment.
Son of a bitch.
Because then his ego will get too large.
Every single episode starts with Trevor insulting me.
Yeah, it's a good.
You'd think I'd stop coming on these.
It's a good dynamic.
It's good. Healthy.
I stab you.
I have to keep your ego in check.
But
now we're in the same room.
No one has less of an ego than I do. I'm the best at not having an ego.
It's not true.
The best.
You have a huge ego, Kent. Genevieve knows.
It's sizable.
Stab.
So we're in the same room. Kent and Genevieve are here. So...
You know, by referencing the earlier podcast, that one has to be released before this one. Unless you greatly confuse the audience.
You're right. I was going to release it before that anyway.
All right.
That was the plan.
Making sure.
That was the plan. So, obviously, this is a great podcast so far.
It's really on track.
Yep.
On track.
Exceptionally on track.
Going 1,000,000 miles towards the finish line.
Try to keep up.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us this week.
See you next time.
Goodbye. Just kidding.
All right, so Kent started a game studio in your house.
This is true.
So you go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Kent stays at home.
Mm-hmm.
And he works.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with the dynamic? Is it different? Is it weird? Because you both would go out and do your jobs. I mean, is it weird having him like work from home or anything now? Like, is it different than what it was before?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's vastly improved in a lot of ways, and mainly that's because before, when Kent would work at studios that had really intense shipping schedules, there would be literal months where I would see him only on the weekends, and sometimes it would start out as, okay, they're gonna have us crunch 4 days a week. We have Fridays. We're just gonna be there until 10 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and have the weekends. And then the next week it would be, okay, well, now we're doing Fridays. And then the next weekend it would be, okay, well, now we're doing Saturdays, but we still have one day off. And they say they're going to have Sundays free till we ship. And then, inevitably they would take Sunday too. And so one studio actually ended up sending me flowers after the game shipped and said thanks. And I was like, you know what I'd really like more than flowers is a big bonus for my husband, or at that time probably fiance or boyfriend. So it's I don't know, for me there's definitely, particularly at this stage of development, I get to see Kent way more, even if maybe the stress quotient of the time I see him is a little higher.
So am I supposed to follow up?
I don't know.
That didn't seem like a question for me.
Well, do you feel like, because he's said before that, like, because it's his own thing, that he's way more stressed.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel that stress?
I think it's different. I mean, Kent, I think you've talked about it before, but like the motivation is totally different, right? Yeah. Like the motivation before was, because it was like working in the game industry. I think that you were pretty motivated by that. I think shipping the game was motivating. I think working for that bonus was motivating. But now it's all like self-motivation, working on a project you guys are all really excited about. But yeah, I think like definitely, we'll just be like sitting there watching TV, and I would always be the one before who would be thinking about work 24/7, and Kent would be like, stop thinking about work. And now we'll be watching TV sometimes, and I'll turn to him and I'll talk to him about something, and he'll be lost in thought, and I was like, are you thinking about a game right now? It's like, yeah. So I think it never stops right now. So I think that's one of the big differences. And you're definitely not thinking about work problems that much at home before.
It's also a little harder to escape work when it's like 10 feet down, like right underneath where I'm sitting is where work happens.
Yeah, so that was important. And like both the first house we rented in Seattle and then now the home that we own, we always want to make sure that his office is like a different space than the living space.
So you want some actual defined space where you have to go to in the house to where it's not.
Exactly. I mean, that also helps just like with distraction, but it also means that like in our first rental house, it was like upstairs. So he could, he would have to like come downstairs and be done hopefully for the night.
Now I come upstairs and I'm done for the night.
Yeah.
Big difference.
It's a big change.
It's changed so much.
I can barely even do it now.
So you've gone through a lot of change too.
Yeah.
Obviously, you bought a house.
Uh-huh.
You're on the verge of having a kid for the first time. So I mean, it's a lot of change happening all at once. Like, I mean, how do you guys feel about that? And for both of you, does it put more pressure on you for this to be successful?
I don't like change. That's it. That's my entire
What do you think? You're the one who started the company. Even more change for you.
Yeah, I mean, the kid, I think, adds the most stress for it to be successful because, looking at it from a negative perspective or even a realistic perspective, it's like, there's a pretty big chance this won't be successful. And before it was, that sucks, but we've saved up some money, and like when it's all said and done, I go back to work. Suddenly there's a kid, and obviously that's expensive. So it's like, okay, we really need to know, is this going to be successful or have some level of success at least? When there's this kind of little person depending on you now.
And obviously they can't work.
Yeah,
no,
unfortunately.
Not yet.
Gotta wait at least a year, I think.
I know. He's worthless.
Yeah.
You just gotta get the baby into modeling when it comes out.
Yeah, 3D modeling.
Yep.
Making assets for the game.
It'd be great.
Yeah.
Just open up like Maya or something, hand her the mouse and see what happens. Yeah, hope for the best.
My kid's a prodigy.
Great. I'm like, whoa, you actually made that?
The way I like to think about it, and that Kent and I have talked about it, is, I went to grad school between moving from Boston to moving to LA, and before getting my first big break in the game industry. And I wasn't making any money, cost money to go to school, but I developed a lot of skills that really helped me advance my career a lot. And so that's how I like to think about it with Kent, and I talk about it with him, which is, essentially this is like one big learning, besides it being a dream project. Right?
Yeah.
Let's just ignore that for a second. But it's, it's a huge learning opportunity, I think, for everybody on the team. And for Kent, that means, running a business, that's new, seeing a project from end to end. A lot of game developers never get to really see how a game comes together. They really just work on one piece. Mm-hmm. And they understand that piece really well, but it's maybe harder for them to kind of link how their work ties to this bigger picture. And then also just like technically, he's developing, working on an engine, which a lot of game programmers or UI programmers would never get the opportunity to do in a normal job. Figuring out how all the pieces fit together. So yeah, I mean, I think of it as like worst case scenario. It's like going to grad school for a couple of years.
Step on that bitch.
It's under the table. Come on, jeez. Get it. Here's the shoe. I got a shoe.
Trevor got it. Suck it, Spider.
Well,
slight interruption.
You could probably cut that out.
No.
Yep, it's happening. It's staying.
It happens.
You need to know that this is what happens when a spider interrupts our podcast.
horrible creature.
What the hell was I talking about?
Who knows? Doesn't matter. Spider's dead.
Big one.
Yeah, what the heck's all these big spiders in this house?
Really big.
It's fall. They're coming into the house now.
Holy. Okay.
End of the season. All
Grad school. It's like grad school.
Take two.
So you're before we got interrupted by a spider, you were talking about Kent improving and increasing his skill set.
Yeah. So I think about it as like 2 or 3 years of grad school, but without all the debt that we would go into for grad school. So, and that's worst case scenario. I mean, I'm very, it's definitely dead.
I'm keeping an eye on that bitch.
But yeah, I'm hopeful, but also realistic because I understand the industry.
Right.
I know that there's a chance that, it just is, it's hard to get exposure and make money off of indie games. But I'm also hopeful. I think you guys are doing all the right things to become profitable.
Joke's on you.
That's my hope.
I'm squandering all the money on a Ponzi scheme.
Oh, God.
Well, for you, do you think it helps you from a mental standpoint having the background in games so you actually understand the industry?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even when Kent was a programmer at like some of these bigger studios, I certainly know like plenty of partners who are not in the games industry and can be really empathetic and understanding. But, like when he would be working these really long hours, it was like, yeah, this is what we have to do. This is part of the job. And vice versa. Like when I had to do longer hours in my jobs, he understood. But also I think it helps that I understand the process, so I don't have to really be relying on him to explain everything that's going on, which is also good because you don't do a lot of explaining.
I explain everything.
Oh, yeah.
Everything.
Give me an example.
As I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Right now, I have a card in my hand. I'm putting it back on the table. And then I'm picking up this plastic sword and holding it in my hand.
Great. I stand corrected. So.
I win. Knew it.
So you're actually gaining more knowledge from his thoughts and his process just by listening to this podcast. Yeah.
I was saying that like it's been fun figuring out kind of what he's thinking by listening to the podcast. But also just like I've been learning through all of you what it means to start start a game studio, which isn't a process I'd ever been through before. And one of the things like when Kent was setting up the trademark or building the LLC in the first place and figuring out like how many it's not shares, how many percentage like everybody got.
How many technically
profit shares?
Yeah,
It's not like shares in the company.
Right, but none of that.
It's legalese.
Yeah, none of that is stuff I ever understood. So, I think if we ever are crazy enough to go through the process again, like if I ever start my own company, like I've learned a lot from watching you guys go through it.
Yeah, so you get the knowledge base, secondhand from him.
Definitely.
So, yeah, it could definitely help you in the future.
Yeah.
So what would you say is your biggest challenge with him starting his own studio?
I think the hardest thing has just been...
I'm going to fight you. Be careful what you say.
I have to think careful here. With Kent being his own boss, that is, I think, more challenging. Because when it was somebody else, we had, not that Kent was ever particularly good at taking vacation or time off. But at least before, I was like, oh, well, you have this much set time off. Like, right. I know you have it. Like, they'll understand. Let's do this thing. But now it's like, we've bought the house, we have a puppy, and so Kent's done a lot of taking care of that stuff while because his schedule is more flexible. Mm-hmm. But I think especially as you guys get further along, that schedule is going to become a lot less flexible.
Right. And
there's not going to be any guaranteed time off or known vacation periods. And probably you're just going to want to be working all the time, is my guess. So I think that is going to be the biggest challenge. Is just he is a pretty hard driving boss as his own boss.
Yeah.
I'll fight you too. Be careful what you say about that.
Well, what kind of pressure do you feel is on you if you're not working on the game?
That I should be, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of times if I'm not working on the game, nothing's getting done. Not nothing. Well, it depends on the time, of course.
Yeah,
since you guys are time ahead, like, especially.
well, plus there's only certain things we can do with this, like, because
Yeah.
we're all working on different aspects. So it's like, if you're not doing anything, like, for instance, I don't have a new build of the game to play to test more at this juncture. So
yeah, it's just, I mean, anytime I'm not working on it, even, I could work on it for however many hours in a given day, and then as soon as I stop, I'm like, man, nothing's getting done on the game. I should probably be working on this right now. Like, you feel bad that you're not currently working on it. So it's a little harder just to separate work and not work time, basically.
One of the things I've been really impressed with, though, is, like, I was a little worried about Kent going into business with his friends.
yeah,
Because, like, I think in general the advice is, like, don't do that.
yeah.
And I was a little bit more, I was like, yeah, this could work because of the relationship you guys all have and because it's something everybody really wants. But making a game is incredibly difficult. It's, I think, one of the hardest things a group of people can do together. I mean, maybe that's an overstatement, but it is one of the harder projects to work on as a group. And I think I worried, like, okay, what happens if somebody doesn't want to do it anymore? What happens if somebody's not doing the quality of work? Like, are they going to be able to kind of weather this together? But and I still think there's a lot of, like, challenges coming your guys' way as you get closer to the end of the line and shipping the game. But so far, yeah, I've been, like, super impressed with how well you guys work together and have been able to collaborate. And I really like, with everybody having other things going on in their lives and other jobs and school in some cases, like, the fact that you guys can still be hitting your milestones and putting the game such a priority in each of your lives is really cool to see.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of hard to, because of the time zone difference and everything, it's hard to know, like, when can I do this now, or should I do this now? Should I do it? Just the timing. And for me, it is so hard for me to pick a set schedule where instead I'm going to work on this now because like now's when I feel like doing it. So, but that could be like, noon or like 10 o'clock at night. So it's hard for me to just like pick a time to do it. It's kind of like mentally like, now I'm here. I'm in work mode now, so I need to do this now. Or, oh, I need to do this now because I need a podcast to go out on time.
I'll give you guys some more credit on something too, which is, like, when I've worked on a couple different R&D games in the industry, and one of the places where I typically see the most tension is like creative differences, which is so cliche, but it's also it's where people really break down, and like one person will have a very specific vision for the game, one person will have another vision. So that's another place where I've been really impressed as kind of like, I watch you guys through this process is, I mean, unless there's stuff I don't know about going on behind the scenes and you guys all secretly hate each other.
Let us tell you about the arena.
Is this a real thing?
No.
Oh.
But if we ever come down to something we can't agree on, it will end in a blood sport of some kind.
Okay, yeah.
Well, no, it'll end in Kent using his ego to make the decision.
And also blood.
Yeah. Probably. No, I mean, I think all of us just know each other so well, in a sense where we're not going to like sit there and argue about it like in a real manner. Like, we might just be like Kent might say something and be like, that's real dumb, Kent. But like, we're not doing it.
This is a hypothetical. This will never happen because all my ideas are brilliant. Let's say Trevor said the dumb thing. That's what I think we should talk about.
But we would say that as a joke, not as like, we really think Kent is.
Yeah, because again, that would never happen.
Yeah, and I think where it typically really breaks down is like just kind of lack of trust or respect in the other people. like typically trust in the person who is driving the vision, but also on the on the other hand, the person who's driving the vision not listening or respecting kind of the thoughts of the other people. And like while I wasn't here when you guys did the initial planning, you know, from listening to the podcast, it sounds like the fact that everybody's thoughts were incorporated and heard, but there's still this kind of driving vision for what it's supposed to be. It's not like entirely let's mix together everybody's ideas, you know, and not have
it's like we all kind of just like look at the picture, and so Ken will ask us something about this, and then he'll get our ideas, and we'll all just, well, how about we do this, and then we're all kind of like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, and like kind of we've been very collaborative in that aspect. I think the biggest thing is right now, like just for some inside baseball for anybody listening to the podcast, we're trying to figure out the name of the game and what we're gonna call it. And like that's been our biggest point of contention because there's so like
nothing is harder than naming something.
It's really hard.
It's like but the studio name came so like easy.
Yeah.
Like Kat was just like, I was thinking Winterborn, and we were like, yeah, we all like that. Like that was it.
Let's just call the game Winterborn, even though it doesn't make any sense for the game. It'll be Winterborn by Winterborn.
Because that won't be confusing
Not at all. Because, well, you know, that game, Winterborn, who makes it?
Winterborn.
Winterborn? No, that can't be right. Winterborn.
But like now we have all these like a list of names that we could possibly call it, and it's like we're just like, well, does this sound good? Does this sound too much like something else? There's so many other things that aren't games that have names similar. Like, do we want to create that confusion? It's like we have 50 different. So this is like our biggest point of contention. It's like, but then you ask one of us like, well, what would you call it? And we're like, I don't know. So it's
yeah.
That's one of the things, because for people who don't know, we're in Kent's parents' basement for this week so we can work on some stuff, and that's like one of our biggest things is to figure out the damn name of the game this week. But
this is where we're going to use the arena.
And I think, that really points to like having a lack of ego. I think is so important in indie development. I mean, any development.
Lack of ego, Trevor.
I know we opened this by talking about Ken's huge ego.
Yeah.
But because I think, you know, every game I've ever worked on, they had a really hard time coming up with a name. Like oftentimes, actually, at bigger studios, you don't even really get a say. Legal ends up doing it because it's whatever legal can kind of get the trademark on. And
well, I also think, as a semi-tangent, but like I think that's why so often when games do reboots, rather than try to figure out a new name, they're just like,
they just call
this is Tomb Raider.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, amazing game, but it's like, there was already a Tomb Raider, but it's like, sure, I kind of get where you're going.
And then in conversations for the rest of your life, well, are you talking about the one from 1996?
Exactly.
Or the one from like 2016?
Tomb Raider, parentheses.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, it's like, when it comes down to it, when those are hardest is when people really put their ego into them, and they're like, my idea is it's not just about the ideas, it's about me, and like if you don't.
That's why we're gonna call it Ken Gambill Presents. Whatever the title is, it doesn't matter.
That is my biggest pet peeve to a game development. Like, you know, even in the size of your guys' team, it's not a one-person show. Much less when you have like 500 people.
Sid Meier has earned it. Very few others have.
And I mean, in all honesty, if he wanted to put Ken Gambill Presents on it, I wouldn't care.
Hell yes.
I would care.
Hell yeah.
You might, but like,
not allowing it.
It's going to be Ken Gambill Presents Ken's Awesome Game. That's the name of the game.
The one thing I would say, I was like, do you have enough name recognition for that to be a thing? And like, he would say, I mean, he would probably agree that he doesn't.
I definitely do. Just walking down the street, people are like, "Oh my God, is that Ken Gambill?" Happens all the time.
Maybe if it was Jack Steele Presents. That
might
actually
get out of
work.
here.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Jack Steele sucks.
Jack Steele Presents.
Man, I'm gonna go fire Jack. I'm gonna fire everyone else.
Well, Jack, if you're listening to this now.
Yeah. By the way, Jack, surprise.
Shocker.
Well, I've got a question for you guys, which is, what advice would you give to like a significant other or partner whose partner was like creating a game studio? What do they need to know or be prepared, or how can they best support somebody who is going through this crazy journey that you guys are going through?
Patience. I mean, there's a lot of different factors, of course. So if it's 1 to 2 person team that is just like gonna start working directly on the game, making Unity or something, 9 times out of 10 they're not focusing as much on some of the stuff I have to do, which is like make a trademark or whatever else. So it's more about just working on the game. So I think, especially for someone who is not experienced with the game industry or games or anything like that, I think that's would be easier for them, because they're like, oh yeah, I see that thing you're working on, and it's suddenly a game after 2 weeks. Whereas that, or even taking a further step back, but like doing engine work, to where no one who isn't working on the game will ever be able to see that. Like,
yeah,
if I do something like a great example is, not that long ago I made a UI widget, which was a vertical list, like for setting up lists of buttons, in our UI, or list of whatever UI widgets we needed. No one outside anyone working on the AI is going to be like, oh great, that's awesome. But like Jack, for example, who at the time was making a menu, was like, oh, this is so much easier than how it was before. It's like I was able to remove half of the code for this particular menu, and then it's so much cleaner. So especially when there's situations like that, just be patient with the person working on them, because even if you can't see any progress, there's progress. I mean, usually progress being made.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say really it's a long road. Don't expect it to just be like, go from I want to make a game, and then suddenly there's a game there in 3 months.
Yeah, it is pretty funny. Like, my parents will always be like, oh, how's the game going? Like, what can you tell us? And I'm like, well, don't think it's really gonna make any sense to you if I tell you what kind of progress is being made. And they're always like, oh, try me. And I'm like, well, Kent pulled me into the room, and now when the characters move, they don't run into stuff anymore, or they do run into stuff. And so that's actually a really big deal, that they have a concept of there's a thing in the way.
Pathfinding.
I can't use the word pathfinding. I have to, describe it in that.
Yeah.
And that's where it is kind of nice that, like, I have some background in game development, because I mean, some of the early stuff Kent was showing me, he'd pull me into the room, super excited.
You have an understanding of it.
Yeah, and he'd be, he'd like, he'd turn it on, he'd like boot up the game, and then like show me that when you hovered over a menu item, there was a concept of inventory, right? And like, from the very basic coding or scripting that I've done, but also being part of game development, I'm like, well, that's a big deal. Like, there was no concept of an inventory before, and now there is. But yeah, I think that's good advice. What about you, Trevor? Like, what would you recommend for...
I don't even know, because I mean, I don't have a significant other, so it's kind of like...
What would you have your D&D players know to why you suddenly can't make it for a D&D game when they're doing it?
No, I mean, like literally for them, I'm like, hey, I got to work on these 2 weekends, so sorry guys, I'm not DMing, so... and then they're like, if you're not DMing, we're not coming then. And that's exactly what's happening. So yeah, I mean, that's what it is for them. I mean, I don't really know. It's hard to think what I need, because I don't... I guess it would be nice if someone... Because, like, I'm very, like, when I'm in work mode, like, I don't think about, like, the essentials, like food and like that sort of thing. So, I mean, it'd be nice to have someone to be like, hey, maybe you should like eat something, or that sort of thing. So just someone there to remind you to take care of yourself, in a sense, because without that, it's like,
there's probably an app for that.
Honestly, there probably is. Or
like
you could just like set reminders in your phone, like,
oh, it's a good idea.
Get up and walk around.
Yeah.
Eat I know there's a Twitter account that's like,
drink water.
Drink some goddamn water.
No, but
Might be one for food and, whatever else.
I think you raise a good point, though, with, like, I mean, I know you were kind of joking about the DM group, or the Dungeons and Dragons group, but, I think that is one of the things. Kent's hours are just much more, like, his schedule's more flexible, which is really nice for us, since my schedule's a little less flexible, so he can, like, if we need to take the dog to the vet or something, he can take time off in the middle of the day to go do that. But then the flip side is like, when he's going to be here all this week, I'm heading back to Seattle, or, some days he's like, yep, I just got to work all weekend to kind of make up for this or that, or hit this milestone. And I think that's going to happen increasingly more, where you're going to have kind of just weird schedule. And the pros, there's pros and cons of that, but it seems like having a, whether it's significant other or your friends or family or whatever, just understand that, like, when you're doing your own thing, you don't get to necessarily have as, like, predictable a schedule, and sometimes the game's going to have to come first in some situations, or at least be prioritized.
Remember that in 2 months when I'm telling you the games comes first.
I was just about to ask.
Don't hit me.
When you have a baby.
Yeah.
Nope. Game comes first.
Things that are gonna come first, even before the game. But
I could probably figure out a code with one hand when you hold the baby like this and kind of give her a bottle. With
exactly.
I'm sure there's, like, a robot for that now that, like, swaddles your baby or something.
Probably.
Or,
Yeah.
So I guess that's what technology will help you there.
Until it goes berserk and holds the baby for ransom.
The AI has come.
Skynet.
So what do you think the challenge is going to be when the baby does arrive?
I have less time, but more work. That's pretty much it. Like, everything eats into my time frame.
Well, I mean, obviously at first Genevieve will be home because you'll have, your maternity leave.
Yep. Yeah, I think, one of the challenges that I think for both of us, because I'll eventually be going back to work.
Mm-hmm.
But I've heard from other parents that have, that are work in tech, that when, we right now have the kind of the luxury of, when I want to get work done, even when I'm at the office, I typically reserve certain tasks until I have, like, a big chunk of time, like 2 hours. And I know for Ken, as an engineer, like, really needs focus time to sometimes just block out and totally focus. And I think the challenge for both of us is going to be, we just might not have the luxury of always having chunks of time of uninterrupted, no distractions, because even when I'm home and I'm able to take care of our baby, like, we're going to be in the same house, so I think there's not going to be many distraction-free days in our future. So
soundproof headphones, going downstairs,
maybe.
Lock the door.
Yeah, but I think both of us
set up guard corgis.
The corgis are great at not being distracted.
Yes,
I was going to say, they might distract you more
such
than a
the
baby
quietest
would.
dogs. But yeah, I think both of us will have to just learn how to work in kind of bursts when we can, and just deal with distractions as they come. So I think that's going to be a big skill for both of us to work on.
Mine will probably be getting used to cocaine so I can stay awake for longer periods of time. It's not really, don't really have any experience with it, and I need to work my way into that arena.
You need to wean yourself on it.
Yeah, exactly. So that I can get my sleep down to maybe an hour a night, and then
it might evolve.
might have some side effects. I don't know.
Might.
But I think that's a good point too. Well, okay, no, that's a terrible point.
Is that a good point?
That's a terrible point.
Sweet.
Well,
all right.
maybe a bloody nose here or there.
Really bad, a really bad point.
It's probably a good point.
But I'm gonna find the goodness in there, which is, I think we also might, it might be a little bit actually returning to the days of when we didn't see each other, except on weekends we might end up doing a shifted schedule. So like, even though he's working from home, he's still, one of the things that is really important, I think, to remember, and this goes back to maybe advice for other significant others, is like, he's at home, but I don't expect him to be doing housework when he's home, as an example, right? Like, he's got a job, and so I think...
Sweet.
Yeah.
I'm not doing the dishes anymore.
Not when you're on your job.
I'm out.
Not when you're on the clock, but when you're off the clock. But I do think that that's something we might return to a little bit, is this idea of like a shifted schedule. So maybe maybe Kent has a much easier time staying up later at night. I have a much easier time getting up early in the morning, so that might be something that we do too, is shift schedules where we might kind of just almost pretend like, we're leaving the house, going to work, and then we have some overlap time where we are both off of work, but I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there, I guess.
Right.
But I definitely think that's one strategy that might work for us. Yeah. We'll see. We're kind of living in denial until we get there.
I was gonna say, so from a mental standpoint, like, how ready are you guys to be parents?
No.
So ready.
Not ready. Ready as you can ever be, I guess.
Baby's gonna be like, "Sup?" I'm gonna be like, "Hey, baby." She's gonna be like, "What you doing?" I'm gonna be like, "Working. Can you keep it down for a while?" And she'll be like, "Yeah, sure, Dad." I'm like, "Thanks, baby."
So not at all ready. Is what he's saying.
That's not how it's gonna go.
Nope. No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
But we have already started arguing about. Well, we started arguing a long time ago about what we would do in terms of when she'll be allowed to play M-rated games. So that's mostly where our parental arguments are going to come from.
Yeah. So I mean, that's actually a good topic. So when it comes to actually raising the child, even though it's years away from that point, I mean, how do you, knowing about games, being in the industry, I mean, there's stuff like parental controls, like that sort of thing. I mean, do you have any plans as far as, like, are you gonna let them play all the time? Like,
yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we don't have a lot of concerns around like screen time that I think a lot of parents have. Mostly because I think that, I had rules about, I didn't have like screen time rules because nobody did in our generation.
Right.
But I did have I had to set a timer on the oven, and when the timer went off, I had to go outside and take a break, basically. So I did have some rules around it, but I think in general, we don't really see video games as a bad thing, right? Like, I think we both see them as a really positive thing. But for me, it'll probably be around being part of the experience with our kid.
Yeah.
So I think especially when she's younger, we'll totally let her play games. But as much as possible, like, we want to be part of that.
Yeah.
Multiplayer only.
So you think it'll be more of a bonding experience?
Yeah, I mean, the same way, like, Kent and my relationship was basically formed around playing games together, and a lot of what we do to pass time and spend time with each other is playing games together. I think in that same way, I mean, there's actually such really good games that parents can play with their kids that they just didn't really exist when we were kids. Like Skylanders, we played together. Like the Lego games is another example. I mean, Minecraft, Project Spark wasn't long lived, but that's a really cool example too. Those are all things that when she's old enough to play them, I mean, if she wants to play them, I'd be happy to sit down and spend time playing those with her. So I suspect video games are going to be, you never know what your kid's going to be like. So
right,
maybe
so maybe she'll just not care.
We're not going to be friends.
And I mean, even if it's Fortnite, like,
no,
I don't think Kent will play with her, but I'll play with her.
No, not allowed to play for it. Yeah. It's going to be, the rule is going to be, if I like the game, she can play it as much as she wants, and if I dislike the game, she can't play it at all. I think that sounds like a good rule. It'll be like, I'm not a big fan of Battle Royale games, so it's going to be like, oh, a Battle Royale? Sorry, not in this house. She'll be like, why? I'll be like, nope, sorry.
Hopefully we'll move
rot your brain.
And then when she's a teenager, she'll rebel against you by playing Battle Royale games instead of smoking cigarettes.
That's great.
No!
She'll be like a casual gamer just to piss you off.
Yeah, that'll be, She's
like, I play mobile games, Dad.
Like, no!
She's like, I'm going to go work at a mobile games company.
I don't have a daughter.
She's like, I just beat Candy Crush.
Can you beat Candy Crush?
I think so.
I've never actually played.
I think it's really hard after a while, too.
Yeah, it does. So it's really hard to do. But
accomplishment.
Yeah.
I think we also both have the experience of, like, even though, so my parents were pretty strict about what games I could play. Like, there was no violence allowed in games. We played a lot of Nintendo games. But I think I had experience where we still managed to get our hands on violent games. Like, we had Mortal Kombat on the. That was the handheld Sega called the
Game Gear.
Yeah, we had Mortal Kombat on Game Gear, which was like full violence.
Oh yeah.
And then you used to say that people would come in to EB Games, and like it was not very hard to get an M-rated game, even if you're.
Oh no, because parents would
you get an uncle or a cousin or an older brother, or like. So like I think we can't be like, that's not your dad.
I need the DNA test.
Yeah, like how are we gonna fight against that?
Be like, I
don't have a dad.
Who are you? He left us.
Wait, I don't think you can. Parental. You mentioned parental controls. Like, I don't think we're gonna really bother. I mean, maybe we'll.
Unless it becomes a problem, like.
Yeah, it's more like.
And she'll be smarter than us anyway.
Right, that's the thing is, like, kids if they want to find their way around parental controls, they'll figure it out.
I cannot tell you the number of times at school where we just disabled all the the site blockers and just did what we want. It's like, come on.
I'd rather just hopefully we can just be part of her game playing experience and then at least know what she's playing and also hopefully trust her enough that.
Yeah, I mean, but how do you feel about games now? Because Mortal Kombat when we were kids was like very violent, but it's not like now if you look at Mortal Kombat, it's like so realistic and like they're pulling literal spines out and like, I mean, do you have I guess
I think this is where we disagree.
Go for it. I want to hear you first.
I don't care. I mean, I would think that my daughter will be able to separate that in a mind space. Exactly. It's like if she does that and then she goes out and tries to Mortal Kombat somebody, we'll have to have a little talk. But I mean, I guess it's kind of the same attitude that my parents had with me. It's not like I ever played a violent video game and then wanted to go fight someone. And the number of studies that have proven. There's no real correlation.
I mean, I've always felt that violent games have been more of the where I put my aggression as opposed to putting it out onto somebody else. Yeah. So
for me, unless it's gonna scar her or scare her,
Yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, aside from a few, Mortal Kombat's a good exception where it's hyper violent. If she wants to play it, sure. I know somebody listening is going to be like, you are a horrible parent. But,
I think I've actually evolved my thinking on this, being around my nieces too, which is I don't think I'd let them play Mortal Kombat when they're young because I think it would be just scary and frightening and give them nightmares.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
I was I only played Mortal Kombat a little bit, and I think it actually did bother me a lot when I was a kid, so I chose not to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's is a 6-year-old gonna want to play Mortal Kombat most of the time?
I might be a little concerned if she did, but I think that I think a lot of it comes down to emotional maturity too. Is is she young enough that she's gonna be trying to I probably would not let my elementary schooler play GTA. Given what I know about the emotional maturity of it, somebody at that age that she might reenact things that she sees in the game, which are just not appropriate for anyone to be reenacting, much less an elementary schooler who doesn't understand the context, right? But I was, I think that, and I think I do worry a little bit about being judged by other parents, so I think that's the type of thing. But that would be what would stop me, is just
other parents.
No, it's would she know that it's not really okay to be repeating certain things that she heard in games or acting out certain things that she saw in games.
Right, and then she does something in front of another parent and
or other kids, and then we get in trouble.
That's when it's funny.
Yeah, I know. That's where you and I differ a little bit. So
go repeat that at school.
But yeah, I mean, if we have an emotionally mature 13-year-old who knows the difference between reality and pretend, then. Yeah, I'm not. As
Notice
concerned.
In my hypothetical, it was a 6-year-old.
In
hers,
so we do have some differences here. But I also think it's not worth getting in arguments about this because we have no idea what games are going to be like when she's 13. And I'm honestly more worried about what the online community is going to be like, or
Yeah, that'll be worse. No matter what it is, that'll be worse.
And I'm like, I watch kids on Reddit and online in these gamer communities and what they're being exposed to, and they're thinking, and like, that's more, I'm not really as concerned with the games. I'm much more concerned about the community. So who knows what that's going to be like by the time our kid grows up.
Games don't mess people up. Other people mess people up.
So I don't know. Hopefully, I don't think you can't really fully police what your kid's exposed to online, but hopefully we can be part of that too.
I just code up my own fake internet for her. And anytime she goes to a different site, it'll just redirect her to like something stupid. And everyone will be like, man, that internet's cool. And she'll be like, what? No, it sucks.
I know, like I had rules about
what I could... It's gonna be a fake phone. Like everyone else will have a cell phone, hers will just be a brick. Why is everyone always talking about how cool these phones are? All I can do is hold stuff down.
Cal just programmed so every call from a boy just redirects to his phone.
Yeah, exactly. Who is this, Mike? Stop calling Mike. Hate Mike. I don't know if there's any Mikes listening. You're going down.
I'm not sure. I apologize to all the Mikes.
Yeah, sorry, Mike. Nothing personal.
It is personal.
I mean, I don't think any Mikes listening now will be calling your daughter, so...
They better not. Then we might actually have a problem.
Seriously, back off, Mike.
For all those infant Mikes out there.
Yeah.
We'll see.
If you're listening to this because your dad's listening to it, you better
watch out.
You better watch out. All right, so that's Parenthood with the Gambills.
Yeah.
I think that'll do it for this week.
What are you going to name this
podcast?
This
is a weird one.
Rambling with the Gambills.
There you go. That's what it's called.
How to raise a gaming kid.
Yeah, there you go.
How not to be a parent.
Yeah, don't be like these
How
parents.
To be or not to be a parent.
How to be a good/bad parent? Question mark.
How to parent?
Yeah. Just make sure it's a question.
Yeah. Question?
I'm not too sure about
this.
We
don't know because we're not there yet. We'll figure it out.
So we'll just have to talk to you in 6 months.
Yeah. We should redo this podcast in 6 months and we'll just be like, oh, we were wrong about everything.
Everything was
Literally
wrong.
everything was wrong.
We're screwing up every day.
We had no idea what we were talking about.
It'll just be like, does anyone want to babysit out there, please?
We could use a good one. Just send us some recommendations.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll fall asleep halfway through the podcast. Yeah.
7 o'clock, time for bed.
All
right, well, Genevieve, where can they find you online?
They can find me on Twitter at Miss__aligned, probably still.
Remember the 2 underscores,
two
unless Miss_aligned has given us the username like she should.
Yeah.
If you're listening.
You probably just gave Miss_aligned like 20,000 new followers.
20,000.
Yeah, we have a lot of people listening.
Yeah, it's so many.
And I also have a blog on strategy and data and insights, which is called tiny-data.tech.
You used an underscore in one and a dash in the other.
It's like really bad.
What is going on here?
I'm not really interested in new followers. Just
oh, so you don't want them to follow?
Yeah, just I like to cultivate my.
You hear that, Mike?
Yeah, get out of here, Mike. Don't need your follow.
You can follow Kent at Profession L Kent.
Yes.
On Twitter.
Clearly, I am professional.
Because
Mike.
he's a professional, Mike. Unlike you, Mike.
Sorry, Mike.
And you can follow us at Winterborn Games on every single social media platform in existence because I put us on everything. If you have any questions for us, you can send those to socialmedia@winterborngames.com. I will read every single one, and if they're good questions, we might read them on the podcast. So I'm talking to you, Nick Lance.
Yeah, Nick Lance. Stop texting me your comments and actually send them. We'll read them online, man.
We'll read them on the podcast, Nick. We know you're listening.
We do know you're listening.
And that's going to be it this week. You can find me at Trevor Oz. And thank you guys for listening.